Hello, my dear friends. How are you doing? Hope you are having an amazing day and not having to deal with drama. Ready for new stories I have for you today? Let's go to the first one. And don't forget to listen to the end of the story, guys, to hear my insights. Enjoy the stories, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment. Let me start by saying that I've always been very close to my brother-in-law, Mark. My husband Ethan and Mark lost their mom when they were kids. Ethan was 12 at the time, and Mark was just 7. Losing their mom so young left a deep scar, and when I married Ethan, I naturally took on a nurturing role for Mark. I've always thought of him as the little brother I never had. I've been there for him through thick and thin, helping him with school projects, offering advice during breakups, and cheering him on at his soccer games. Our bond has always been strong and purely familial. Ethan, my husband, is the love of my life. We've been married for a decade, and he's my rock. He's kind, understanding, and one of the most grounded people I know. He and Mark share a close relationship, and we've always had a supportive, tight-knit family dynamic. Ethan trusts me implicitly, and I've never given him a reason not to. That's why what unfolded with Clara, Mark's now ex-girlfriend, was so shocking and infuriating. The whole ordeal started innocently enough. A few weeks ago, I walked outside to find deep scratches etched along the side of my car. At first, I thought it might have been a random act of vandalism or an accident in a parking lot. While annoying, these things happen, so I shrugged it off, filed a claim with my insurance, and got the scratches repaired. A few days later, it happened again. This time, the damage was worse. Along with the scratches, someone had punctured my tires with nails. It wasn't subtle either. The nails were deliberately hammered in, leaving my tires completely deflated. That's when I realized this wasn't a random act. Someone was targeting me. At first, I racked my brain trying to think of anyone who might have a grudge against me. I'm not the type to get into fights or hold grudges, and I couldn't recall any recent conflicts. Feeling uneasy, I decided to install a security camera overlooking my driveway. If this vandalism happened again, I wanted to catch the culprit red-handed. Sure enough, it didn't take long. About a week later, I woke up to find fresh scratches on my car and yet another flat tire. This time, I had proof. When I reviewed the security footage, my heart nearly stopped. There, in broad daylight, was Clara. She was pacing angrily in my driveway, scratching up the paint on my car with a key and jamming nails into the tires. She looked furious, muttering to herself as she worked. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Clara had always seemed a little insecure, but I never imagined she would go this far. I felt a mix of anger, disbelief, and sadness. This wasn't just petty vandalism. It was malicious and deliberate. I decided to confront her directly, hoping there was some kind of explanation, or at least an apology. I went to Clara's apartment the next day, armed with the security footage on my phone. When she answered the door, her face immediately fell. Before I could say anything, I showed her the video. "Why?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady despite the anger bubbling inside me. "Why would you do this?" Clara crossed her arms and sneered at me. "You know exactly why I did it," she spat. I stared at her, completely baffled. "No, I really don't. Enlighten me." That's when she dropped the bombshell. Clara told me that one of her friends had seen me and Mark together at Victoria's Secret a few weeks earlier. According to her friend said we looked suspicious, and Clara had convinced herself that we were having an affair. She claimed that she had proof that I was trying to steal Mark away from her. I couldn't help it. I burst out laughing. Not because it was funny, but because it was so absurd. "Clara, are you serious?" I asked, shaking my head. "Mark asked me to help him pick out a birthday gift for you. He thought lingerie might be romantic, so we went to Victoria's Secret. We didn't find anything, so he ended up getting you a spa voucher instead. That's it. That's the whole story." But Clara wasn't having it. She called me a liar and accused me of always being too close to Mark. She claimed she'd been suspicious of me for months, and that the Victoria's Secret incident confirmed her worst fears. When I told her she needed to pay for the damage to my car, Clara laughed in my face. "Good luck," she said. "You're not getting a penny from me. You should pay me for causing me stress and sleepless nights by trying to steal my boyfriend from me. Now get out." That was the final straw. I told her I was calling the police, and I walked away. I filed a police report that same day, handing over the security footage as evidence. The officers took my complaint seriously and assured me they'd handle it. Clara was later charged with vandalism, and I filed a claim to recover the costs of the damage. Between the repeated scratches, the nails in the tires, and the obscene words carved into the paint, the repair bill was significant. Looks like Clara didn't believe I would go to the police, as she thought it would put light on my attempt to steal her boyfriend, which is laughable. When Mark found out what Clara had done, he was horrified. He came to me immediately, apologizing profusely for her behavior. He said he had no idea she was capable of something so malicious, and that he couldn't stay with someone who would attack his family. Within a day, he ended the relationship, telling Clara that her jealousy and insecurity were unacceptable. Clara, of course, blamed me for everything. She accused me of manipulating Mark and sabotaging their relationship. She even tried to drag Ethan into it, claiming I was cheating on him with Mark. Thankfully, Ethan knows me better than that. He's been incredibly supportive throughout this ordeal, reassuring me that I did the right thing by standing up for myself. Clara hasn't let it go. She's been sending me nasty messages, spreading rumors about me, and trying to turn mutual friends against me. Most people have taken my side, especially after seeing the security footage, but a few have suggested that calling the police was an overreaction. They think I should have handled it privately to avoid escalating the situation. I disagree. Clara's actions were deliberate, malicious, and showed a complete lack of remorse. If I hadn't taken legal action, who's to say she wouldn't have escalated further? Her jealousy and insecurities were not my responsibility, and I refuse to be her scapegoat. I feel confident that I did the right thing, but some people's reactions have made me second-guess myself. Should I have handled it differently to keep the peace, or was calling the police the best course of action? Clara didn't just cross a line, she obliterated it, damaging OP's property multiple times, refusing to take responsibility, and then doubling down with false accusations? OP was right to call the police. This isn't about keeping the peace, it's about holding someone accountable for their actions. If she's mad about the consequences, that's on her, not OP. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Not the a-hole. Her behavior was completely unhinged. She vandalized your car repeatedly and refused to take responsibility. The fact that she thought she could push her way out of the situation makes your decision to involve the police even more justified. Clara needs to learn that actions have consequences, and you're not the bad guy for making sure she faces them. Not the a-hole. Clara's paranoia and insecurity are not your problem. You went out of your way to explain the situation, but she refused to listen and escalated it with her destructive behavior. The security footage was all the proof you need to call the police. Honestly, you handled this with more patience than most people would have. Good on you for standing up for yourself. Not the a-hole. You gave her every chance to explain herself and make things right, and she chose to dig her heels in and act like the victim. Damaging your property and spreading lies about you is unacceptable, and calling the police was the only logical step. If anything, Clara is lucky you didn't take action sooner. Her life unraveling is entirely her own doing. Stay strong. You handled this perfectly. Update. After Clara was charged with vandalism, I hoped things would settle down. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. She continued to scratch my car, even after being confronted and facing legal consequences. On top of that, she began bombarding me with calls and texts, blaming me for stealing the love of her life and ruining her future. Her messages grew increasingly erratic and obsessive. She accused me of sabotaging her relationship with Mark and claimed I was the reason for all her misery. I felt unsafe, and my husband, Ethan, insisted I take further action. I filed for a restraining order, which was granted due to the ongoing harassment and damage to my property. But the real bombshell came during one of her final tirades. In a particularly unhinged voicemail, Clara claimed that Mark had confessed to her that he dreamed of having a wife like me, and that he was secretly in love with me. I was stunned and didn't know how to process it. Mark has never acted inappropriately, and I've only ever seen him as a little brother. Whether Clara made this up in a desperate attempt to justify her actions, or if there's any truth to it, I'll never know. Mark has denied it, and I'm inclined to believe him. Regardless, this ordeal's been an emotional roller coaster, and I'm relieved to finally have some legal protection from Clara's unhinged behavior. My husband, 44, has stage 4 liver cancer, and the outlook is grim. Our relationship has been turbulent at best. My husband has struggled with alcoholism for most of his life to cope with the aftermath of a childhood with an emotionally aggressive mother. The only reason I overlooked his dismissive and cruel behavior for so long was because my daughters, 9 female, 10 female, 13 female, love their dad and see him as the nice parent because he never disciplined them and spoiled them with presents. When my husband was 22, he met a woman, Emily, who is 15 years older than him. They dated for 3 years. Emily inherited a company from her parents, and despite claiming that she loved him, was very adamant that she'd never tie herself legally to my husband. When we started dating 5 years later, he told me they separated amicably and remained friends. Around 12 years ago, my husband lost his job, and Emily's company was hiring. He said we needed to pay the bills, so he was going to take the job with her since it paid a lot. He relapsed after the birth of our second and third daughters, and he spent all his time at work, ignoring me at home. He'd yell and remind me that I didn't work and he was pulling in loads of money and advancing to the top because of his time and effort. 2 years ago, he was fired from the company because of his alcoholism. I saw a text on his phone from Emily that said, "I protected your job the best I could, but my hands are tied." Then, after more than a year of dealing with fallout of his unemployment, he got his diagnosis. The day after, he told me that he never stopped loving Emily and wishes our kids were hers. He said his last wish is to be able to spend his last days with Emily and die in her arms, but that he wants my blessing. I'm working retail, and we are in severe debt because he had blew his huge salary every year buying clothes, alcohol, and by gambling. I talked to Emily, and she said she would only fund his care if he was with her, and reminded me that my husband had received payroll advances and a personal loan from her. She didn't intend to forgive the debt when he died. Yesterday night, I sat down with my husband and told him I wasn't comfortable giving my blessing until he was transparent about matters like life insurance, because he refused to take out one during our marriage. He screamed, "What's the point of naming me on insurance when the money was going to pay off his debts to Emily and others anyway?" He ended the argument by calling me a gold digger. I woke up this morning realizing I couldn't deny a dying man his last wish, and really did feel like a money grubber. So I told my husband I'd give him my blessing to die with Emily, and he could explain to our kids when he chose. We sat down at lunch, and that's when he decided to tell our kids. All 3 of them started crying and saying they hated us, but mostly me. My eldest said, "Who is going to care for us, and that I don't make any money? Am I the a-hole for not pushing the topic of his estate anymore and breaking my kids' hearts?" "You're the a-hole. Lady, you need to see a lawyer. The life insurance is not used to pay a debt. Only the estate can pay a debt. You are so manipulated by this narcissist that you are willing to let your children starve while this romantic story plays out." I don't think a-hole would be the correct term for this situation, but you're the a-hole. You should be fighting tooth and nail for your kids. They're probably going to take this the worst, and having the money will help their childhood. If he's your legal husband and you're in America, you have to opt out of life insurance, meaning he can't not name you without your written permission. Talk to a lawyer ASAP. I'm not exactly sure what to say, but I am leaning towards you're the a-hole. You should be fighting for every possible cent you can get from this clown, and duck that bogus blessing. You should have told him to go kick rocks. Pack up his crap and set it outside, and change the locks quick-like. I'm not sure how your kids could possibly fault you in any of this, but one day they will truly understand. You need to speak to an attorney ASAP. That man may have a policy you don't know about in her name. You better get yours, Mama Bear. What the duck? Your husband is an a-hole. His sugar mama is an a-hole. Well, you've tolerated this crap for way too many years and not gotten yourself some good legal advice. By all means, dump your husband off at his lover's house and take a nice vacation after you see that lawyer. Protect your kids, and don't sign over a single cent to anyone unless there is a court order. My daughter, Luna, 27, has worked for the same company for 5 years. It's a small company. We've often been invited to holiday parties, events, etc. There we met our daughter's colleague, Greg, 30 at the time of passing. We also met his wife, Nancy, and their daughter, Brooke. We knew Luna and Greg were close friends as they worked on the same team that often traveled locally. In March, Luna told us that Greg was diagnosed with terminal cancer. We immediately reached out to Nancy to offer support. She informed us they were separated. I was surprised, but didn't pry. We offered her support, which she rebuffed, but I didn't find that weird as we weren't close. In May, Luna came clean. She and Greg had carried on a 3-year affair. Looking back, clues were there, but I never connected them. She said he separated from Nancy right after his diagnosis. I admit we were all pretty ashamed of her. She was raised better than to carry on a relationship with a married man. Still, we didn't tell her this and offered her support, as well as Greg in his final weeks. He passed over the summer. Because they never divorced and Greg never changed his policy, Nancy was the beneficiary of his life insurance. The rest of his assets were put in a trust for Brooke when she becomes of age. Outside of a few sentimental items, Luna was left nothing. She has complained consistently that Nancy should have given her some of the policy. Luna and Brooke also developed a bond. After Greg's passing, however, Nancy cut off all contact. This has been hard on Luna. On top of that, she was not included in the obituary and was heavily ignored at the funeral. We've been sympathetic and supportive. Our extended family, however, isn't. They are also ashamed of Luna and feel the above are the breaks when you're the mistress. Out of both sides of our family, only myself, my husband, and one of our other children, out of 3, attended the services. My mother-in-law was cheated on by her first husband, and so many feel for Nancy versus Luna. Luna has made it clear she's unhappy. Thanksgiving came around. We went to my mother-in-law's. There were some there who hadn't seen Luna in a while. None brought up Greg. She started on not getting anything from the life insurance and not seeing Brooke. One of my nieces said, "You had no rights as a mistress." Luna left in tears, and I followed, giving her a hug. She asked why others are so mean, and I said she can't expect them to have empathy for this situation. That she hid this for a few years, was the other woman, and given her father's family history with cheating, it's a sensitive issue. She got upset with me and left. She later texted that we've all betrayed her. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. If you act like a side piece, you have all the legal rights of a side piece. None. Expecting people to not call you out for this is bonkers. Trust me, if my husband ducked around and then died, I would have extreme good pleasure in telling the side piece exactly how much money she wasn't getting. Once I'd confirmed the legalities with a lawyer, of course. Edited to add, this is what people don't realize about marriage. It's fundamentally a contract. Your spouse and children have contractual rights based on that relationship. The government and the legal system give exactly 2 craps about love and soulmates. Not the a-hole. Back in my day, we called these homewreckers. Imagine the entitlement of expecting you'd get part of the life insurance policy, taking it right out of the hands and mouths of his surviving spouse and child. I'm kind of surprised she's still employed there after something like that. Zero integrity. Not the a-hole, and Luna is definitely the a-hole. To carry on about how she should have gotten some of the life insurance of her late affair partner is so self-centered it's unbelievable. Life insurance is supposed to help pay the expenses that the deceased no longer can, and the person who now has to bear those expenses is Nancy, not Luna. Unbelievably crass of her to have gone after the affair partner's widow, who she knew, for the money the widow needs to help raise their daughter. Even people who might not be judgmental about the affair would be very judgmental about her greed. My Aunt Celine was my mother's older sister. She was married to my Uncle Ben, but they did not have children. 10 years ago, they sold a property that was inherited by Uncle Ben for a large amount of money, and they decided to get life insurance policies. They are each other's primary beneficiaries, and I was Aunt Celine's favorite niece back then. She named me their secondary beneficiary. About 2 years ago, Aunt Celine and I fought and stopped talking. I know she loved me and she helped our family financially, but she was very pushy with her traditional and conservative views, as one of those people who thought that they get to be right just because they're older. I tried to be as respectful and understanding as I could, but when she told me that I should only give my dad $100 every month to buy his food and medicine, and I should stop buying him luxuries like clothes and shoes from outlet stores, because he and my mom are estranged and he needs to be taught a lesson, I snapped and told her she had no right to dictate what relationship I want to have with my own father. She was enraged at my disrespect. Since then, we have not spoken. A few months ago, she and Uncle Ben sadly passed in a traffic accident. In their wills, they left money to their nephews and nieces, except for me, the niece who talked back, and my sister, the lesbian. Both of us don't really care. However, this is the issue of their life insurance policy. The payout is a substantial amount, and apparently, since Aunt Celine never removed me as the secondary beneficiary, and she and Uncle Ben passed together, the money is mine. When Uncle Ben's family, his sister and their children, Found out about the insurance policy. They called my mother and told her that I should give them the payout. They said that it was unfair that I would get the money since Aunt Celine made it clear that she didn't want to leave me or my sister anything, and their source of wealth is the sale of the property that Uncle Ben inherited from his parents. My mother talked to me about it, but I'm thinking that this money is legally mine, and I am under no obligation to give it to anyone. I didn't force Aunt Celine to name me the beneficiary then, and my mother even pointed out that maybe it would be better if she also named one of her nieces from Uncle Ben's side as co-secondary beneficiary. But Aunt Celine just said that one secondary beneficiary is enough. It's not my fault that she didn't remove me as the beneficiary after we stopped talking. Also, Aunt Celine and Uncle Ben left money to my cousins, the children of my mother's other sister, so clearly they wanted to leave them something. But Uncle Ben's family wants me to give the money only to them and not to my cousins. How is that fair if I go by the definition of fairness? Am I the a-hole? This is a tough one. Seems like she forgot to remove you from the policy after your fight, and since you weren't included in the will, it's safe to say she didn't intend for you to get the money. Legally, the money is yours. Morally, she didn't want you to have it. But what is fair? If I understood you correctly, your cousins already got money from the will, so they just want more. Unless the insurance money is way more than they got in the will, that's not fair. If I were you, I'd split the money with my sister who was also shut out of the will. Probably support my dad if he still needs it. That seems fair to me. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. It's not like she was super young. Someone older dying isn't totally unexpected, accident or not. Life insurance is a continuous payment plan and would have been paid every month, year, etc. So it wasn't like she would have forgotten she had the policy, and she could have easily changed who the beneficiary was in the last 2 years. Not the a-hole. Maybe she forgot to change the insurance policy. Maybe she didn't. Either way, what makes Uncle Ben's family entitled to this money if not you? It sounds like his sisters didn't get anything in the will, and they're looking for a way to cash in. Presumably their kids, as nieces, nephews, are provided for in the will. This is close to an everyone sucks here, because the truth is, she probably wouldn't have wanted you to have it if she cut you off in every other way. But you're the beneficiary, so it's your money, and they obviously didn't mean for their sisters to get anything either. So they're not really in a position to say that the money should go to them. My stepson is a picky eater. I've tried to battle it as much as possible by offering him different foods, but it's so difficult when not every adult is on board. My partner, stepson's mother, and my mother-in-law, who watches stepson while everyone's at work, are all picky eaters in some way. Mother-in-law and stepson's mother don't eat seafood. My partner has a whole list of foods he won't eat, including most cooked vegetables and raw fruits. On the other hand, I grew up eating almost everything. This morning I made some strawberry pancakes for everyone, and my stepson didn't want it. My partner tells me to make him something else instead. This is normally what happens every time we cook. He has to have special meals made for him. I always make sure we have at least one safe food for him to eat for every meal, but I told my partner that I'm not going to make a completely separate meal just for him because it just solidifies his picky eating, that he can eat his safe food, or if he's really hungry, eat what everyone else is eating. This is especially important to me because my 8-month-old is eating solids now, baby-led weaning, and I give her whatever I'm eating in age-appropriate pieces to avoid picky eating, and I don't want her seeing her dad and brother and emulating them. My partner was upset that I refused to cook a separate breakfast for him. I stand by my decision to not cook an additional meal, and if it's that much of an issue, either stepson's mom or my partner needs to prepare his meals themselves to give to me. I do feel bad because obviously I don't want my kid to starve, but I also don't want to encourage his picky eating. And no, he does not have any kind of sensory issues. He just likes plain foods, sweets and basic fruits. Edited to add. I seem to have sparked some confusion with my use of the word safe food. I only meant that with every meal, I offer a dish that I know for certain he'll eat, like mashed potatoes, rice, corn on the cob, pasta. Edited to add too. My kid is 3. Our dining table rule is he needs to take a bite out of everything on the plate. I try to expose him to as much foods as possible, just like I do with my daughter. The other adults don't do this, and he literally gets what he wants to eat every time he's with his mom and his grandma, and even my significant other when he's the one cooking. So when he's used to getting food like cheeseburgers, nuggets and fries, or mac and cheese, he doesn't like eating vegetables or fish, or even beef when he's here. And I guess picky may not have been the right word. I mean, he does eat different stuff when he's encouraged, but it's a battle. I'm often sitting at the table feeding him myself. If it's not food he loves, he goes into no and don't want it mode. I didn't think I needed to go into depth about that. Not the a-hole. What fresh hell is it that makes your partner think you need to cook his picky kid a separate meal? That would be a hard pass for me. If Dad thinks Junior needs a different meal, then Dad can get off his butt and cook it. I'm guessing the pickiness might be less coddled if he was the one who actually had to do the labor involved. Everyone sucks here. Your husband was out of line for telling you to cook something else. Excuse me? Get off your butt and cook something. That said, not everyone tastes things the same. You're making a huge assumption when you say he just likes plain food. There might be a reason for that. I am a very picky eater, and things other people will swear have little to no flavor have an overpowering flavor to me. One example is lettuce. The taste of lettuce is so strong and horrible to me. I want to like lettuce. I have tried so many times to eat salad, but I just can't do it. So, to just assume that a child, or an adult, is being picky for the sake of being picky actually makes you a bit of an a-hole too. Not the a-hole. I am a picky eater. My parents didn't cater to me. As soon as I was old enough, I had the option of making myself something if I wouldn't eat the main meal, like make myself a peanut butter sandwich or a bowl of cereal. At restaurants, they told me to order sides I would eat if it was a type of restaurant I didn't like. I hate seafood, for example. It taught me how to be able to manage myself, and it served me well as an adult because even as a picky eater, I am always able to find something to eat that I like in social situations.